your number doesn't match ours, then you're in trouble.
It's like a poker game, and you could win some handcuffs. Welcome to Business Technicalities. I'm Tom Lawrence.
And I am Jason Slagle. And Brett, you look different today.
Just a little.
Yeah.
Brett is we sent him to California. That's where he's from anyways. So he went back to where he came from, but he's coming back to the channel once he's done at some training event, hopefully to drop some more knowledge over here. So we sent him to do some learning on all these new policies. It's a
Sounds
fun thing you have to keep up with. And today's topic, though, is I hate my job is not a business plan, because I have replied to that in comment sections many times. Jason feels it because we spend a lot of time on, probably too much time on Reddit, and my job sucks. I quit my employer. I'm trying to take all their accounts and I started a business. Is that a great idea, Jason, all the time?
Yeah, no, that's it's something I see a lot, right? A lot of MSPs I run into are basically somebody that was, help desk or tier two guy that's got a little bit of business sense, and they're like, I could be my own boss, and then they go and they start a company.
Yeah, and there's this assumption that just because you're good at tech, you're automatically good at business, as if that's a completely translatable, good at one, good at the other. You're good at managing people because you can manage computers, which is
Yeah.
usually the opposite. A lot of techs are not particularly social. And even myself, the biggest learning curve of starting a business wasn't learning networking or routing or any of that stuff that people may be really talented at as a job. It was figuring out how to manage people, how to do sales, how to talk to people. I was okay at talking to people because I worked in a level of management at IT, but I was not prepared for. It turns out people won't just call you problems, no matter how good you are.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been a learning curve as I've gone through kind of my career from the similar sort of thing, right? Like, my computers until Chat GPT, they weren't talking back to me very much.
Yeah.
So it turns out employees do. Uh,
Uh,
so yeah, the people problems and the business problems are definitely some of the more challenging.
Yeah, and I've seen there's some weirdness that I feel when I see a lot of people talking about Chat GPT for marketing, because the marketing side of it is what people are bad at. And then, can Chat GPT teach tech people how to talk better? Can a computer teach people how to talk better to people? I don't know. I think the jury's still out on that one. It makes for some great content, but I don't know
Hmm.
that it's really actionable. Is taking the time to learn how to talk to people, learn how to engage and speak with them. I think that's the really big skill that is the first gap you're going to encounter. Now, a couple things, and I started pulling my notes over so I make sure I stay on topic here. One of the things when you start a business, you have to ask yourself what you're going to do different. A lot of the concept around entrepreneurship is, and we're going to keep this narrowed to tech, but what are you going to do different than the place you're working at? Are you just going to charge less? That's often what I hear of. Oh,
Hmm.
my former employers charge too much for things because they're just overcharging and ripping off clients. But that's an easy thought when you look at what you make versus what the company charges. But me and Jason can tell you, as business owners, there's a few costs
Yeah.
in between, like, oh, I don't know, cybersecurity insurance, liability insurance. We were late starting this video because we were talking about just how expensive providing healthcare is for people,
Yeah.
and that's not something you see on your bottom line as an employee. You're like, cool, I got benefits,
Yep.
but that actually has a hell of a cost to it.
Yeah, I mean, the general rule is that you cost your employer about a third more than your salary, right? So between their side of the payroll tax, which you don't even think exists until you realize it does, and Medicare or Medicaid plus health benefits and any other ancillary things, we use 1.33 when we're doing back of the envelope math.
Yeah, you have to price yourself to think about that. The second thing you need to price yourself is thinking about growth. This is where I see how many people are one-man bands forever because they've
Hmm.
priced it enough. So maybe they make 60, $70,000 a year themselves taking
Hmm.
home, even if they're hitting that 100K, but they've gone, oh, now how do I hire someone? Because a good technician is going to cost me 60, 70, or 100K as well. Well, sorry, you just created, I hate to be diminishing and say you've just created a hobby, but in some ways you have, because
Yeah.
you are so integral to the business. And you have to really think about this when you're starting a business. This is part of the planning phase of it, is going, how do you price for growth? How do you price for that? It sounds crazy because, good news, when you first start a business, if you can land the clients, if you figure some of the other things out and you've priced for growth, you actually make a ton of money doing it out yourself before you hire people. You actually work on a better margin as a solo person, charging a good, reasonable market rate than you do when you hire employees. But that's what allows you to hire employees and bank some of the
Yeah.
money to get there.
Yeah, I mean, a general rule of thumb is that your salary you should not dedicate more than a third of your revenue to tech salary, right? And if you're a sole practitioner, there's more you have to layer onto that, right? Because it's roughly 10% sales and marketing, right? There's other numbers that if you're going to wear all the hats, that number drives even lower. So you can probably only dedicate about 25% of your salary. Like you need to make 4 times that in revenue.
Yeah, these are it's those little factors in the back end, but we can because we're not here to really gatekeep. We just want people to think
Yeah.
consciously about before they do it. And this is something me and Jason are very much agree in. Hire an outside accounting firm to file your
Oh
numbers.
yeah.
And as I call it the blessing of the books, because I do process a lot of the numbers and people go, oh, so you do your accounting. No, 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 no. I like to understand what general ledger categories things go in and organize
Mhm.
it and list out all the transactions, but I do not put tax forms. I don't sign them until my accountant's signature is on there as well, that they said these are the way to properly file the collection of local, state, city. You have city
Mhm.
tax in yours. I'm lucky enough
We
to
do.
be. I don't have it at where I'm at, but you do have it where you're at. But if you're actually in Detroit proper, close to me, there's a whole nother extraction layer of taxes. But that's where the accountants. Matter of fact, we actually got dinged for briefly having an office in Detroit. Just by having the office, we owed a bunch of Detroit taxes by
Yeah.
using it as a kind of like a listing. We had it just kind of as a meeting space. But if you met there, you had to Detroit wanted an extraction of
Mhm.
that and some paperwork.
Yeah, we've got that going on right now with Michigan because we have our first VoIP client up there, and apparently that tipped Michigan onto the fact that we exist. So now they're like, "Well, you have economic nexus up here." And now they want me to pay state sales tax in Michigan too. So going through that whole process as we speak, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, so there's a lot of legalities. Now, the business filing registration, people think that really deeply. That's the easiest part. That's like
Oh yeah,
that's so cheap. Filing for the business is easy. It's the
yeah.
accountant. And an accountant's not the most expensive part, but if you start out with a good accountant, I've actually had the same accountant since I started in 2003. The same, well, same firm. It's actually now the son running it. So there's been some changing of the guard, but nonetheless, same accounting firm. They've always done right by me, and it's always been a blessing to have it because I had some troubles in the very beginning because the state messed up some paperwork and they don't say I'm sorry. They just send you what
Yeah.
they think you owe until you have an accountant who can sort that all out.
Never understood that. They know what you owe, but they won't tell you. So
Yeah.
it's like we calculated what you owe. We're gonna make you calculate it, and if your number doesn't match ours, then you're in
Yeah,
trouble.
who
It's
thought
like
playing
just
poker should it's like a
yeah,
poker game.
yeah,
It's like we gotta lay it on the table and you could win some handcuffs.
yeah.
Definitely a funny part. One of the things too, and I don't want people to be oversold on this because you are being oversold by people who glamorize entrepreneurship. They're like, oh, this is the year of the entrepreneur. Everyone should do this and buy my book and buy my class and buy my training,
Mhm.
blah, blah, blah. And it's I've actually I've actually learned to like Gary Vee a little bit better because I see a lot of people like as if he's glamorizing it, but he's actually not. If you listen to
He's
more of
not.
what he says, it's those people where he's cool, but some of his audience isn't because they're over selling his hustle entrepreneur life as the only way to make money. And the reality is, I have some friends that, as I'm positive Jason does, that make well over 6 figures having a job in tech. and
Yeah.
and
Oh yeah.
and not as many worries as you might have running a business.
Yeah.
Don't get oversold by people telling you you have to be an entrepreneur. It's the only path to success. There's like I said, numerous people that have never owned a business that have a ton of good wealth. So if it's
Yeah.
just wealth you're chasing, the job might be a faster path to it than entrepreneurship.
Yeah, there's a bunch of things that come with it. I mean, Gary's core message is find something you enjoy doing and do that
Yeah,
and do it as best as you can, right? And that could be entrepreneurship. He's big about side hustles.
yeah.
Side hustles are a little bit easier than making it a full-time gig, right? Like but yeah, his whole thing is, find a path to happiness. Uh there is there are many people that finding the right job in tech is probably the right answer to
Yeah,
in not becoming another MSP because uh,
the market's
there's a lot of
saturated.
risk. There's a well
Well,
it's not even there's always room for more,
yeah.
right? Like the problem is that what I tend to see in those smaller shops, and Matt actually owns itaah.net. IT is a hobby,
Mm,
because we were kind of riffing on that as a marketing thing against some of the like smaller one man shops.
yeah.
And They can do it right, but what I find often is they just don't have enough depth, and so you got to be careful to not get there. And when it with security becoming more of a thing, it's going to be an even bigger problem than it is right now. Like you need to understand every aspect of this,
Right.
and it's probably not enough to just be able to solve end user like system problems.
Yeah, that's very true. I've realized that talking to, a lot of the audience on my main channel, where a lot of them, they all want to start the business, but they're just like help desk right now and
Yeah.
thinking they can go the other side. There's there's a weird relationship, and I almost feel it's kind of asymmetric for the amount of risk we take on as an IT MSP. For each
Yeah.
client, there is a big risk on there. We have insurance to cover this and everything else, but sometimes you have to look at that and just going in cheaper or being undertooled or not understanding the
Mhm.
tools you have, which is probably an even bigger problem because cool, everyone knows these are the most popular cybersecurity tools. There's a handful of them, the top 5, but do you even know how to set them up right? And things like
Yeah.
that can be a giant knowledge gap, and you're putting a lot of risk on the client, on you, on the legalities of it, being sued, and then not being, having any reputation left if any of this happens. There's a lot of things that all need to be taken into consideration before you decide this is what I want to do. I want to run the business, because it's just, there's a lot to it is the best way to describe all of this and sum it up.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot to it. Like so when I was younger, uh, after I left the ISP, I got bit with the well, I can just do this myself bug, and went out and did it. I had a LLC I formed. I had a couple customers. Turns out you actually have to bill people to get paid.
Oh, yeah.
I eventually would bill people, but man, my billing practice, I wasn't very good at it. And it took me a lot of years, some amount of classes, which were, I have a degree in engineering technology, but some of my elective classes, I took some finance classes, right? So I took some classes. It took a lot of self learning, a lot of reading, a lot of educating myself to finally get to a point where I feel like I'm good at it or well enough at it that I can run a company our size.
Yeah. The biggest thing for me, and I've actually mentioned this before because I'm a graduate of the Goldman Sachs Small Business Program, and it's called GS10K. It's actually really educational for me because I don't have any training prior, other than having worked in corporate, and I did some rewriting of the accounting.
Mhm.
So that's how I know double entry accounting is because I wrote software. But that's a weird way to learn it. But that only was a very small piece of it. Understanding the entire how billing, collections, how you factor money, that is a lot to learn. Good news is there's a lot of learning you can do, but boy, grab a few books on running a business. Grab the E-Myth. I mean,
Yeah.
that's probably, well, E-Myth
E-Myth. Yeah.
Revisited, I think, is the latest iteration of
Yep.
that. That's a good book on that topic as well. Just kind of get you big picture thinking on a lot of it.
Yeah. Traction. I've been mentioning it almost every week with Brett.
Mhm.
Traction's a good book if you're getting started. And grab a book on accounting.
Yeah.
Like you, at the very least, understanding how double entry accounting works, understanding what your chart of accounts looks like, what a balance sheet, what a P&L, what a cash flow statement. Like at least you need to understand what those documents look like
Yeah.
so you can even determine if you're healthy.
And they're one of the things that is so easy to do when you're starting out because there's really nothing fun on your balance sheet. Your P&L is just kind of a
Nope.
loss, and there's very few general ledger categories because you just started. If you start early on all of that, you can always add more later as your company
Mhm.
matures. But if you start with a fundamental understanding of it, you'll go a lot further.
Yeah.
I think the final thing I really want to mention here, because this is a big pet peeve of mine, because I see people posting about this all the time, and that's that ideas are cheap, ideas are easy, everybody has ideas, execution is everything. Don't
Yeah.
think your idea should be some secret. I literally seen another IT person who does have a small IT business. They want people to sign NDAs to talk about to them to talk about their next idea, and I'm like, really? Is your idea the same as everybody else's? I feeling it is.
Yeah.
I'm driven nuts. But even when people want to hire me for consulting, they want to throw me an NDA for, oh, I have this incredible next thing. It's bigger than Google idea, or I'm going to build the next Facebook. I'm like, I'm no, probably not.
No.
The same thing when it comes to an IT business. It's not a secret. I'm very open about what I do. If you ask me what tools I'm using at that time,
Yep.
I always tell people that's your secret sauce is not that at all. It's all about your marketing and things like that. Matter of fact, by
Mhm.
being transparent, you'll make a lot more friends. So,
Yeah.
but it all comes down to execution. You can go grab them the list of tools Tom and or Jason is using right here in 2023, but that won't
Yep.
necessarily make you better at it. It's about that community, going to events, learning a lot from other business owners. Being open is a way faster path to success than trying to wrap everybody up into our secrets are so proprietary. I've got this incredible idea, but it has to remain a secret. Nah, that really just doesn't work. It's all about execution.
I 100% agree with that. Like we use NDAs, but it's around things like we're talking about financials and
Right.
other things like that where it's appropriate, right? Like there is very little proprietary information about how we run our business.
Yeah. NDAs to keep the company names that we have and are supplying
Mhm.
us. That's actually something even some of our companies that we land, they do not want, there's, and for good reasons, they're not wanting to be a target because if you know you're using certain client and there is some threat actor targeting a client, that is good information for the
Yep.
when they're digging around going, oh, I want to attack XYZ company. I wonder who their IT provider is. Oh, all right. So if I focus on their IT provider, let me see what I can do to try and sort that out. Or they will call that company and pretend to be you. These are big
Mhm.
cybersecurity problems that I'm not seeing happen real often, but boy, I think as things get locked down, pretending to be the IT provider of a person, I think that's a 2023 prediction I'll throw out
They
there.
yeah, they happen. It happens more than you probably realize
Yeah.
it does.
Yeah, probably more than I realized because it's the social engineering side, but
Yeah.
it's a big risk. It's something I will throw out there. I think we'll see it more public when we when we get the debriefs on these. Of course, in some ways, that's how some of these large hacks happen. Is a lot of that social engineering impersonating one of the engineers to
Yep.
get their level of access. But that's a whole nother topic that you do have to worry about if you own a business and you're tasked with securing it. So these are all the things that you should think about. And decide if you should just, my job sucks. I should find another job. But if you're going to start a business, at least think consciously about all the things we talked about here. Read some books on it, get well read, well versed, level up your skills on it.
Yeah, I mean, my parting thoughts on that are like, I am a fan of the MSP life. You learn from a fire hose, but I will say that in almost every case, if you're willing to put up with corporate shenanigans, you can make more money there,
Yes. My
right? Yeah,
my friend, he's figured out because his raises have all come at every time he threatens to leave and start a business. But he says that's real. He goes, I'm not paid for the job. I'm paid to put up a corporate shenanigans. It's
yeah,
like, yes,
yep,
yes, you are. That's why you're
yeah.
here.
We've lost a couple over the years that go to enterprise, and I'm like, I can't touch that salary,
Right.
but with big enterprise salary comes big enterprise problems, and
Yeah.
it's stagnation and like you're going to work on that one technology, very little chance to innovate. And maybe not all corporations are the same, but like the handful I've worked for have mostly been that.
I want to have one of my friends on to walk through it. He has to do it anonymously because he's not even allowed to list on LinkedIn where he works because he works for in the Fortune 500 realm
Mm,
at cybersecurity. He can't even have on LinkedIn, and he is watched like a hawk to not mention where he works and make videos or anything. It's really weird all the
wow.
restrictions corporate comes with. Comes with a hell of a paycheck, but I thought about doing an anonymous video just talking about the shenanigans because they're funny, different thing you may expect, but also interesting how things work inside. There's good and bad with it, but he
Yep.
enjoys a very good life from the money he makes. So, he stays with the job thing, even though he's got some entrepreneur stuff in his head. But he'll probably watch this video as well. I'll send it to him. All right. Well, thanks again for joining us. This was definitely fun, and well, I'll try to do a few more videos with Jason or let give Brett a break once in a while.
Cool.
Thanks.
I'll talk to you later.